Come, Holy Spirit, and fill the hearts of these, your faithful, and kindle within us the fire of your love, and may my words and our hearts together glorify you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, I thought I would start my sermon this morning by asking people to raise their hands and say if they had ever been a recipient of bullying. And then I thought, of course, if I have to do that, then I probably need to ask people to raise their hand and say, have you ever been somebody who's participated in bullying? And then I thought better of all that. So let me begin another way. Perhaps you saw it on ABC Good Morning America a few weeks ago, deemed cute. It was evidently cute enough to make it onto 2 major television networks. The video, which I would show you, but I can't, begins by showing a group of little girls at a dance recital. Then one of the little girls ventures a little too close to the other, and thus begins a shoving match, gently at first, but winds up in, the slapping the air of each other's hands kind of match. You can hear chuckles and muffled laughter from the audience that finally erupts into cheers as 2 adults have to take the stage in order to break up the fight. But what happens when those 2 little girls turn into teenagers and live out their differences by turning friends against each other and threatening each other via Facebook and Twitter, calling each other names? Who steps in to break up the fight then? Not so cute anymore, I expect. The problem can even be more troubling among boys. Many of us will laugh at little kindergarten and elementary school boys who roughhouse and call each other names, saying, boys will be boys. But wait a few years, and the roughhousing becomes violent, and the name-calling becomes devastating. I don't need to tell you that bullying has become a problem of great proportions in our society. Some attribute that to our social media that allows for anonymous bullying. But if you don't believe the statistics are bad, then hear these 3. These 3 statistics put together by the Dallas law firm of Parker McDonald. The 3rd leading cause of death among youth ages 10 to 24 is suicide. Male youth are 5 times more likely to commit suicide than those of female youth. This record was inflamed when 9 individual cases surfaced of teenage males committing suicide after experiencing gay slanders and hateful jokes while at school. 2, the largest group of cyberbullying victims and offenders are school-aged females. High school females in the age range of 10 to 18 at a southern high school were randomly surveyed about their involvement in cyberbullying. Approximately 7.9% of them encountered harassment through text messages or on the internet within a 30-day time frame. 25% of those same girls indicated that they had been victims, with 21.3% saying that they had attacked someone else in a similar way. And 3rd, bullying is keeping kids away from school. A nationwide study conducted in 2010 over a 30-day period reported that 6% of high school students would not go to school in order to avoid bullying. This roughly amounts to 160,000 students staying away from school on any given day of the school year to avoid bullying. And if that isn't enough, just this week, the Human Rights Campaign released a survey that polled 10,000 lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender youth across our nation on the subjects of bullying and education. Their findings will not surprise you. LGBT youth are twice as likely to say they have been physically assaulted, kicked, or shoved at school than their straight counterparts. 92% say they hear negative messages about being LGBT at school, on the internet, and from their peers. 42% say that the community they live in is not accepting of LGBT people. Now, tell me that our media ministry is unimportant. And those are just 3 of the more disturbing statistics unveiled by the HRC's Growing Up LGBT in America survey. And Jesus said, "But I say to you that listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you." What are we to make of this? How do we respond to bullying in the light of this teaching? Does Jesus really want us to love those who are bullying children to death? How can that be? I think of the recent verdict of Darun Ravi, the young man who was a freshman at Rutgers University in New Jersey and who was a roommate to Tyler Clementi. Ravi spied on Clementi via his computer webcam, having intimate relations with an older man, and then tweeted to his friends a few days later that they should join him in the observation when Clementi had asked to have the privacy of his room again. The second viewing never happened. As you may know, Tyler Clementi, a gifted, quiet violin player who had just come out to his parents before entering college, learned of the spying and committed suicide by jumping off the George Washington Bridge in New York City. When the jury in the trial that included claims that this was a hate crime based on Clementi's orientation came back with guilty verdicts on all accounts, it seemed fair enough. But then came the sentence. The judge in the case saying that he believed Ravi had been stupid but did not actually hate Clementi, sentenced Ravi to 30 days in jail, 30 hours of community service, 3 years of probation, and an $11,000 fine. This after Ravi had not ever apologized to the Clementi family, not even once, and only did so after the judge reprimanded him. I wanted to scream. What? Are you kidding me? Would you have given this kind of sentence if the situation had been reversed, a gay man spying on a straight man, having intimate relationships, causing him to commit suicide? I wanted to shout that surely Ravi deserved to serve some time for his crime. I wanted to yell that perhaps he should be spied on and ridiculed publicly via social media. But Clementi's parents stated in a reasoned response that while they disagreed with the sentence and found Ravi's apology to be an empty media ploy, they also felt that the judge had presided over the case in a responsible manner. And at least according to the gospel story in Luke, they are right, and I am wrong. You see, like most people, when I'm angry and emotional, my thinking reverts to retaliation, the law of retaliation. You know that law. It's documented in the Hebrew Scriptures. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. The law of retaliation. And truth be told, my response, as is so often the case when we react out of fear and anger and judgment, would only have multiplied the meanness in the world. The parents of Tyler Clementi put an end to it. So Jesus' teaching, while idealistic, impractical, and seemingly dangerous to one's health, is at its core loving. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. Now, lest you think that this is about being passive, letting people walk all over you, rub your face in the dirt, continue to abuse you, think again. Notice Jesus starts this teaching by saying, "But I say to you that listen." You see, these instructions are addressed to those who are willing to listen, to anyone who is willing to be awake to something different, anyone who is willing to listen and to be awake to something different happening in the world, to a different way of being, to a different way of responding. But his instructions are far from passive. Everything in Jesus' teaching is filled with active verbs. Love your enemies, not think about loving your enemies. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hurt you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. Be merciful. Forgive. Give. All action, active, now verbs. Nothing about that is passive. If you don't believe me, try doing it for someone who has hurt or abused you. Loving them, blessing them, praying for them. That is active work. Moreover, Jesus did not relieve his followers for the need to discern right from wrong. In fact, if you go through the Sermon on the Plain as it is taught in Luke, you will discover that he teaches discernment of what is right and wrong later in his sermon. There is nothing passive in this teaching. In fact, the instruction to turn the other cheek could be understood and is often interpreted as instructions on non-violent resistance. You see, the only one who would be striking you on the cheek in Jesus' day would be someone who had power of position over you. To turn the other cheek would be to invite a second strike, causing the one who had perpetrated the violence against you to have to consider what it was he or she was doing. This kind of non-violent responding requires tremendous spiritual discipline and great spiritual imagination. It is so much easier to revert to instinctual fear, instinctual hate, instinctual revenge. I also think that Jesus knew that when we are able to respond with love and blessing and prayer, when we are able to forgive, we actually become stronger. Again, just this week, Olympian gold medal diver Greg Louganis wrote of his journey through bullying. He wrote about how during his life he was called nicknames, including Sissy Boy and Faggot. He talked about how he had been threatened, punched, and had his face rubbed in the asphalt. Still, he persevered. And after hitting his head in a platform dive at the 1988 Olympics in Seoul, South Korea, a country, by the way, from which he could be expelled from being gay, he chose not to quit the competition, but to spend time remembering those people who had inspired his life. With his head newly stitched, he returned to the diving platform and he did the highest scoring dive of those Olympic Games. He said, in that moment, he became the toughest sissy in the world. He wrote, each of us has a hero inside of us and uniqueness that we might not see at first because we are so concerned with fitting in. In time, in my own experience, I learned to celebrate my uniqueness, cherish who I am as a human being, and act out of love and compassion for my fellow human beings. And then he says, to those who are being tormented, find your inner self and your fortitude. So knowing what you know about bullying in America today, it seems to me that you and I are going to need to take a stand if we want to turn the tide of this epidemic. It seems to me that we are going to have to take seriously the impractical teachings of Jesus to love, to do good, to bless, to pray, to be merciful, forgive, and to give. We are going to have to wrestle with what it means to actually do to others as we would have them do to us. In short, we are going to have to learn how to stand in the face of hate, stand for those who cannot, stand for what is right, stand for love and for justice, for hope and for peace. So what are you going to do? Sit passively by as our children are bullied to death? You may not know, but in recent months, our Hope for Peace and Justice ministry has just launched a Safe Schools program. It challenges our public schools who are under mandate by the state of Texas to have anti-hate and anti-bullying policies to actually implement those policies and monitor them. It challenges our private schools to adopt anti-bullying policies and to implement them and to monitor them. We have formed in that effort both adult and youth advisory teams who are helping to guide us. And we need volunteers to help us in our online ministry and website. This coming Thursday night, Hope for Peace and Justice will host the second in a series of films, helping to educate us about key issues. This Thursday night's movie is entitled Bullied. You can read about it in our weekly on page 13, and I hope you will come. And at the encouragement and creative spirit of one of our own members, this summer we will begin training people to monitor a bullying hotline. A hotline for young people to call, to get assistance, or to just have someone listen to them when they feel frightened, when they are being bullied, or if they have become so scared and feel so empty that they even might consider committing suicide themselves. We need volunteers. And I want to encourage you to sign up today, either on your registration pad or at the H4PJ table in the narthex, to participate in something that furthers our efforts at a peaceable solution to the problems of bullying, even learning how to love those who bully, because they themselves inevitably are a product of bullying. You see, Jesus' teachings are an incredible dare. And he knew that only those who were truly awake, truly listening, would accept it. It is not practical at all, not in the sense of getting ahead in the world or doing what comes naturally. But when I hear these words of Jesus, I think about Matthew Shepard's mother. You remember, of course, that Matthew Shepard was brutally beaten for being gay. They beat him and then tied him to a fence post on a country road and left him alone in the cold night. By the time someone found him the next morning, there was no way to save his life. The two men who killed Matthew Shepard were arrested, tried, and convicted of a brutal hate crime, proved guilty of first-degree murder, warranting the death penalty in the state of Wyoming. Who could understand what Judy Shepard, Matthew's mother, had gone through? What mother could sleep with the images of her son tied to a fence, beaten alone through a cold night? And yet she came before the judge and asked that the lives of these guilty men be spared. Love your enemies, Jesus said. Do good to those who hate you. When I hear Jesus' words, I often think about Judy Shepard. her own life shaped by a gospel deeper than hatred, stronger than revenge. I'm not altogether certain I could do what she did. But I hold her in my heart as a witness of the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I submit to you that no matter who it is you are struggling with, someone who has hurt you or struggling with yourself or hurting someone else, learning to love the bully in others and in each of us is the only way to peace. Such love, idealistic, impractical, can be dangerous to your health. But there it is. And it is the one thing that can change our world. The question is, where are you going to stand?